Hey folks, it's Napalm Dawn here on G4G, and today we're going to talk about the future of Marvel Avengers Alliance Redux going forward, Beta 4, and to infinity and beyond. No, it is not any bad news, but I think it's going to be a fun time to have a conversation about this particular topic, and as you see from the name of the video, purity of MAA versus the innovation of MAAR. So, I'm going to draw a little bit of a parallel that maybe some of you can understand when it comes to another game that went through something fairly similar to, say, Marvel Avengers Alliance compared to Marvel Avengers Alliance Redux. Back in the day, it's beyond a 50-50 split at this point. It's like 25-75. Back in the day, World of Warcraft existed. For 3 expansions, or 3 versions of the game, Vanilla, TBC, and Wrath of the Lich King, the World of Warcraft world existed in a certain way. Come Cataclysm, Deathwing burst forth from the ground of Azeroth. He ripped open the ground where he sprang up, and then proceeded to seriously muck about with the world and change things drastically. And now, since Cataclysm, Mists of Pandaria, Warlords of Draenor, Legion, Battle for Azeroth, and the current expansion of Shadowlands, the world has never been the same since Deathwing burst forth. Well, that's sort of what we are facing here when it comes to Marvel Avengers Alliance and Marvel Avengers Alliance Redux. There is going to be this dividing point over here where the world of Marvel Avengers Alliance ceases to exist and it becomes Redux. Now, obviously, that line in the sand has already been drawn. But the parallel here is that we will get into some things on Redux that were different from Marvel Avengers Alliance. And also, we're going to talk about some of the quote-unquote cataclysms that we had in Marvel Avengers Alliance. So, Goofy has surfaced a few days ago. I have known for some time the holiday season tends to get a little bad for Goofy. I may sort of hint at it in the videos, but I do not discuss it completely, mostly due to the fact that it is not my place to say what Jason goes through in life or on a day-to-day basis, even though there's sometimes maybe some knowledge that I have, but he has come out and said he has been dealing with some life stuff and family stuff in the background over there. And as he related, there are times where he sits down to code and just kind of stares at the screen, and then 2 hours have passed by, and then the coding time is gone. To those people with brain afflictions such as ADD, ADHD, autism, Asperger's, depression, bipolar disorder, maladies of the mind as such, I'm sure you can relate to what that is like to just sit there and kind of stare into space and you think 3 minutes have gone by and it's been 2 hours. That is unfortunately what Goofy's been dealing with a little bit of, and this has happened around the Christmas time holidays in years past, but he has surfaced and he has begun speaking on Discord and Facebook again, kind of revealing what has been happening, so I don't mind bringing it up in a video because he's been public about it. So the reason why I'm doing this particular video and talking on the topic is that he had posted a question both on Discord and the Marvel Avengers Alliance Redux Facebook group saying, hey, there are 2 changes I'm thinking of doing in Redux and I want to get the community's idea of it. He realized that originally if you had the agent highlighted and then you clicked on the bio page, you would be able to get to a list of basically what is your inventory. For now, he has a placeholder that says this is you, agent. So he wanted to know, do you want to be able to do the old thing of getting into the inventory, supplies, and gear, or do you want a little bit of a bio? I actually, even the community is very much against my line of thinking on this one, and that is to get into the inventory, but I kind of feel like we have ways of doing that anyway. I think it would be kind of cool if this is you, agent, was there, and you allowed intrepid people to go dive into the code and modify that if they wanted. I'm not saying Goofy should go out of his way and expose an edit button there where you can type something, but rather allow people who have dove into the code before, like myself and other community members, to know where that is in the code and edit it, and you know what? Build a backstory for your agent. What is one of the best things about Marvel Avengers Alliance that other Marvel games did not do successfully since MAA existed and died? It's the agent. We all know the agent is literally one of the most unique and also groundbreaking, ground-changing things that that a Marvel game ever did. It was the fact that you had this agent that you customized to a certain degree, and it sort of became the extension of you. You basically were the agent. You don't see that in a lot of games where the variant or the variation of a central character tied to you exists. Now you have it in Iron Maiden Legacy of the Beast, where essentially your agent is the different Eddies. There was a game called Sunny that existed as a Flash game that has come to Steam and gone to mobile, where you heavily customize the Sunny character, which is a zombie, and then he has friends that become essentially like Marvel Avengers Alliance superheroes and everything. But it is very, very rare that a superhero game has a centralized character that truly is you. I believe DC World Online, you built your character, so I guess you could definitely say that one is true. Shame I can't, but we'll come back to this actually with the battles and everything. But nothing that quite really ever had the feel of the agent. Well, Marvel Avengers Alliance did that so well. I think it would be cool for code divers to be able to go in there and actually write a little bio for their agent. Way back in the day when I was actually playing the game live, I was Agent Johnson, and when Adamantium Process picked me up, I changed the name to AP Johnson for Adamantium Process Johnson. The name came from Die Hard, whereas like I'm Agent Johnson, this is Agent Johnson, no relation. That's actually where I happen to get it from. Similar to where Napalm Dawn comes from, the I love the smell of napalm in the morning. Morning, dawn, napalm dawn. There you go. That's how it arrived. So I think it would be fun to build a backstory on this bio page. And like, for example, if I was still Agent Johnson, I could have that quote there. I'm Agent Johnson, this is Agent Johnson, no relation. It'd just be a funny thing. And obviously it's a for you only joke unless you plan on streaming and doing videos and exposing that to the public in some way. But you still might find it cool to be able to put a bio in there. I'm not saying Goofy needs to put an edit button there to let you do it, but if that's what that section was, and code breakers could get in there and put in a bio over here, I think that'd be fun. I think that'd be a cool little secret and Easter egg. The other thing that he has done, or thinking of doing, is that he noticed back in the day that when you equipped ISOs, it was drag and drop. It was drag it from the available ISOs over here on the left and drop it into the slot on the right. He's also mentioned that he could possibly do away with the drag and drop and do click and highlight, or in these responses, highlight and equip. So all these people are mostly saying, I want to see the equipment for the agent, and I want to do the highlight method for moving the ISOs. I back this one up because highlighting and clicking is a much easier thing to do for people who have trackpads or maybe really, really shitty computers that lag with Flash. There are some people who comment on the videos on my channel and say, hey, this is still kind of like really slow, and it is slower than what you're doing in the video. I have the version you have in the video, it's installed properly, but it is slower than you, and that's because their machine is not handling Flash particularly well. And it's not a surprise, it's an old technology. I mean, it's one of the reasons why Marvel Avengers Alliance would eventually die, is HTML5 was kind of the future of things like this, and sadly this game was still dwelling way back in Flash. So, I mean, yes, it was the mouse was retracting its licenses, and that would be, yeah, that didn't say it was complete, you just had to find out. Yeah, the mouse was pulling back their licenses. Marvel Heroes would get hit the next year the exact same way. But still, it was a aging game technology. So now that begs the question, should Redux be a purist example of rebirthing MAA, or should it be a modernized example of rebirthing MAA? And I'm going to draw that parallel to World of Warcraft, because it's one that exists and it's an easy one to talk about. So when Deathwing burst forth and remade the world, you could not go back to the old Azeroth that you knew. You had some moments where you did some time-walking dungeons, but really you went back to well-known events in World of Warcraft past. You didn't really go back to pre-Cataclysm Sundering. You couldn't do that unless you went to a private server, which had its own issues. Those who were fans of Nostalrius and everything knew they risked playing somewhere where they could maybe one day never play there again. And now it isn't a 50-50 or halfway point anymore. It now really is 1/4 of the world was the old world, and we're now basically living in a time where some WoW players just don't even know the original version of Azeroth and everything, because it's 3/4 gone. So a lot of fans were like, we don't like the Cataclysm changes. Yes, we can fly in Azeroth now, that's cool. We know you basically use the Cataclysm to sunder old graphics and textures because they weren't made to be looked at from the sky. And this is true. I have videos on my channel of World of Warcraft exploration, and cliffs used to just drop off, and textures were not finished because nobody was supposed to ever look at them. They just did crazy things, and you could get under the world, and you could do things that weren't ever meant to be done. You could fly over areas of the world that weren't active. For example, this area of Silithus over here, the back corner of AQ. This is not AQ20 or AQ40. This is a section of the world that you were never meant to see because it was off in a corner above cliffs and everything, or behind cliffs, and you're not supposed to be here. So these things are basically unfinished. And you can see here to this area that I'm flying over right now that is basically just unfinished textures and everything. So Cataclysm was basically a way of wiping the slate clean on this stuff and fixing it. Well, a lot of fans said, we want to go back. We want to go back to the way World of Warcraft was. We don't like this sundering stuff, this cataclysm stuff. We miss the old ways. And Blizzard infamously said, you might think you do, but you don't. Look at this cliff over here. You could tell you were never supposed to see this. I mean, look at how awful this is. But these fans wanted to go back to this world and live in it because it didn't exist anymore and it held nostalgia for them. So Blizzard kept saying, you think you do, but you don't. And then eventually they released World of Warcraft Classic, which is basically vanilla all over again. When that came up, it was like, well, okay, what do we do with Classic? Do we just simply go with vanilla the way it was, or do we bring over some modern amenities? And that is a question Goofy is going to face when he looks at things like this. The purist might say, I want drag and drop because that's how it is. The advanced people, or those for advancement, may say, I want the highlight method because it is easier to do on a trackpad. It's easier to do on a lagging computer. I think, in my personal opinion, is that Goofy should do things that do not create more work for him. If he's like, oh, that's an easy change, I can definitely do that in a heartbeat. I actually know how to code, highlight, and click better than drag and drop. You know what? I'm all for Goofy producing a product that he is happy with and he could produce expediently without too much stress and brain drain. In the eventuality that he does have the coding skill to change things up, maybe a settings button. If we go over to Marvel Strike Force, there are settings in there that allow you to open up 10 orbs at a time, but now it's actually its own button. But for a while, you could set it that way. There were settings that changed how your blitz screen looks, the speed of combat and everything. If he could cake in some settings that appease both the purist and the modernization person, then I think that would be the best way to go. But if and only if it's within his skill set and it doesn't cause him too much strain and effort to do it. I think at some point, from what I've read in a lot of the comments and the questions I get, people are getting antsy for Beta 4. And I would like to see him release a product that he's happy with now for Beta 4. But in the eventuality that Beta 4 comes out and he then goes back to the drawing board of Beta 5 or a release candidate or something, a settings option, if possible, to allow people to make the game the way that they want it, I think would be cool. But again, that's only if he's available to do it. So now, what were some of the cataclysmic sunderings that we ever faced in Marvel Avengers Alliance? What can we draw a parallel to within actually Marvel Avengers Alliance? Not comparing the two, saying the sundering is occurring before MAA and MAAR, but what sunderings did we have in Marvel Avengers Alliance? Well, to me, the stat squish in PvP, I think was the biggest. When we had that moment where the tournaments got level capped and everybody was 60 no matter what level they were above 60, I think that was perhaps a cataclysmic sundering for the game because it evened the playing field and it really, in a lot of ways, hurt sandbaggers. When did this occur exactly? I'm not too sure. I actually tried to poke around YouTube for it. I didn't do the most amount of research. I just kind of looked on YouTube. Kingfisher talked about it in middle to late 2014, right around PvP Season 15, or the end of 14, saying that it wouldn't occur in 15, but it should occur beyond. So that maybe is a valid time frame for it. Again, look at these textures. You were never supposed to see that. That is completely clear. that cliff on the left side there. That was definitely a cataclysmic sundering. The stat squish, and everybody is 60, whether they're 180 or 227 or 300, did very much level the playing field in a lot of ways. I think the next cataclysmic event, and everything honestly seems to be around PvP when you think about it. Maybe level 15 for your heroes. That one was really big, and that one's PvE. Maybe the addition of level 300 as the cap instead of, I think it was maybe 200 when they opened it up. But the other really cataclysmic event that stands out to me is the changes to stamina in PvP. That was really big, because essentially your PvE level of stamina became your PvP level of stamina. And all of a sudden, the ability to attack stamina in a PvP match was a viable thing. You absolutely could consider a drain comp and have it be a thing, because it's kind of a stun in a lot of ways. It wouldn't be good for Doom, because refreshing makes you drop Doom off without any penalties, but if you were just running a drain comp or an anti-stamina comp, it was viable. It worked, and especially worked in the beginning of the changes to stamina. Unfortunately, it horrendously nerfed certain characters like Molly. Molly became utterly useless when the stamina nerf happened. And then, of course, Hafe, or Heroic Age Iron Fist, followed a few PvP seasons after, where it used to be Hafe and Molly were so good, and then Hafe and ASG were so good, and then Hafe and Elsa were so good. And when they realized we can't just keep nerfing all these people that get partnered with Heroic Age Iron Fist, they just nerfed him. And that sucked. But the stamina nerf in PvP was cataclysmic. But again, we're talking about PvP. The only other one that affected the PvE portion of the game, but I still think largely it had the most effect in PvP, and I'm sure you guys can figure it out what I'm going to talk about, because what was PvE oriented but still very big in PvP, what was nearly cataclysmic in the game that we haven't talked about yet, the quick action, free action thing. So it used to be you could stack any amount of quick actions you wanted because they didn't consume your turn. You could just go and go and go and go and go. Well, they changed that, and they said you can do one quick action in a turn, and then you're locked out of it. You could do your free actions, though. That was, of course, a big change, because there was a lot of viable strats that all of a sudden went out the window when the quick action thing changed. And it wasn't just a matter of PvP, although that's probably where it had the most effect, but it also had an effect on PvE. More so, obviously, PvP. So, with the code base that Goofy has, you could be saying, you know, Nap, you're bringing up some good points. If Goofy is rebirthing the game essentially as if it was releasing when Goofy releases the final candidate, and that is kind of day one, like MAA's day one, will we be going through all those changes again? Unfortunately not. And the reason being is because Goofy has a code base that existed slightly before the game died, so all of these changes happened. He is using a code base that free actions and quick actions will have already had their change. PvP will be a thing in stamina. That's already a change. Heroic Age Iron Fist has already had its changes and everything like that. It's very post-change of puzzle, I guess you could say. There has been discussion about fixing Hafe because we think it's excessive. Another thing that is somewhat cataclysmic in between Avengers Alliance and Avengers Alliance Redux is lockbox characters. Playdom in some ways played fast and loose with them putting villains into lockbox characters and considering them redeemed and are now part of your team. Well, that's not going to be the case in Redux. And this isn't Goofy's choice. This is the development team's choice. And when I say development, I mean development of the plot and the storylines, not development of the code. So I will just say the content team, so as not to confuse people. The content team has decided that if somebody is going to be in a lockbox, they have to be fully redeemed somewhere within the Marvel universe. They have to have done honest to goodness heroic things. The plot of, hey, Sabretooth, you're a good guy now because we put a bomb in your fucking head, so tap tap, time's a ticking, go do some good shit. That's hackneyed in a lot of ways. No offense to the people who played who did it. It's hackneyed and it's stilted. You won't see that from the content team in Redux. They are going to be picking people who are honestly, truly redeemed or redeemable if they're going to be a playable villain as a lockbox. So that'll be a bit of a change. If there is a redemption arc for that game somewhere, that character somewhere in Marvel, then they can validly appear as a lockbox. I really have not heard too many people push back on that and go the purist route and say, no, we want to play as the, Thanos because, I don't know, Thanos did a good thing because there was a greater threat than him, and suddenly Thanos was the lesser of the evils, so yay, Thanos. That actually kind of happened. There have been some plots where Thanos has been good, but nobody's really going to consider Thanos good at this point. Surprisingly, nobody has really cried about this and been like, but I really do want to play with Thanos. I would understand where you're coming from, but honestly, you've got about 7 other games where you can play as Thanos if you want. I think one of the best things Goofy and the content team can do to help the people who maybe feel that way, and honestly, I don't know if anybody does. I haven't heard anybody say it yet. Give people a villain simulator and let them be able to go into a simulator, pick villains and bosses from the game's past. Obviously, don't put somebody in there who hasn't been released yet. But hey, give something for Goofy to do when he patches the game to newer versions and everything. It's not just about the next PvP season or the Spec Ops or the chapter. Maybe a boss that was, let's say, Arcade. Okay, so you keep Arcade out of the villain simulator until the Arcade Spec Ops with Nico and everything like that. Once he goes into a Spec Ops, and it's now no longer his active Spec Ops, it's a new one. By the way, Spec Ops will last forever. They will be selectable, even so if you quote-unquote miss it when it comes out, you can still play it in the future. It'll just be in, the archives. So let's say Arcade had a Spec Ops, it's now a month later, and a new Spec Ops drops. That patch can not only drop the new Spec Ops in the new PvP season, but then put Arcade in the villain simulator. So it gives you something even more to look forward to when Goofy releases an update. It's like, oh, who's going to be in the villain simulator now? Oh, cool, it's Arcade. Or it's Thanos, or it's the Serpent or something like that. I think that would be cool. And that might appease people who feel like they're missing out on a character that Played On might have put in as a lockbox, but the content team won't do it. Put them in the villain simulator and let them get their kicks playing it there. I think that would definitely be a fun idea. And I've always been advocating for the villain simulator for some time anyway. If I ever get to, when somebody picks my brain about it, I'm like, yep, villain simulator, let's do it. Let's make it happen. So there you go, guys. That is some stuff that I wanted to talk about on topic today of the purity of MAA or the advancements of Redux. What way do you kind of want to see it? Do you want to see Goofy produce a more modern game that has some of the bells and whistles you would expect a game to have? Or Are you a hardcore vanilla MAA purist who wants the game exactly how it died? No changes to it, no updates, no fancy little things that, a modern turn-based Marvel RPG has. No. Give me Marvel Avengers Alliance how it died in 2016. We have unfinished business to do. Therefore, I want the game how it was when it died September 30th. What camp are you part of? I'm definitely interested in hearing. As for Beta 4, Goofy has begun posting some updates and questions again, so hopefully we'll see something over here. I'm not gonna say a date or a time frame because it gets everybody in trouble, but hopefully we'll see something relatively soon here. Thanks for checking out the video, guys. Have a good one.